No one inside the MotoGP paddock expected what would unfold next. Not Yamaha, not the analysts, not even Valentino Rossi himself. And yet, all it took was a handful of laps, a closed-door test, and a few quiet whispers for an entirely new storyline to emerge. A rookie from Turkey suddenly bending the limits of a MotoGP prototype in ways no one predicted. The shock didn't come from a crash or a mistake or a disappointment. It came from pure, unfiltered performance, the kind that forces even the most experienced champions to rethink everything they believed about the premier class. And as one mechanic murmured during those early sessions, if he keeps this up, the whole championship might need to prepare for something big. But this story doesn't begin at the test. It begins with the silence that came before it. Before the cameras turned toward him, before Yamaha began locking garage doors, and long before Rossi spoke publicly, there was a strange, quiet expectation surrounding Toprak Razgatlıoğlu's entry into MotoGP. Not hope, not doubt, something in between, a fragile, electric uncertainty. According to insiders, Yamaha's situation at the time was delicate. Ducati had power, KTM had momentum, Aprilia had innovation, Yamaha had questions, endless questions. Could a WorldSBK superstar really fix what years of development had failed to deliver? Behind the scenes, rival engineers believed Toprak's aggressive braking would clash violently with Michelin's ultra-sensitive front tire. And deep in the Yamaha garage, even some technicians worried that his adaptation might take months. But that tension only grew when Rossi began showing quiet interest. The doctor wasn't eager to comment, he wanted to see more, he wanted to watch, observe, understand. And the more he saw, the more he realized this wasn't a normal transition. Because Toprak wasn't entering MotoGP like a rookie. He was entering like a storm. And the paddock had no idea how close it was to being hit. Then one afternoon, Valentino Rossi finally spoke. And everything changed. Rossi didn't offer the usual polite praise he gives rookies. He didn't temper expectations. He didn't talk about needing time or adapting slowly. Instead, he dropped a statement that rippled through every garage and hospitality unit. Toprak's adaptation is far beyond what we expected. His level is something I've seen only a few times in my career. Suddenly, the calm skepticism around him started to crack. Rossi highlighted things only someone with his experience could notice. The way Toprak understood braking pressure, the way he read the Michelin front, the way he immediately synchronized with the bike's aerodynamic load. He compared his early adaptation to some of MotoGP's rarest phenomena. Rumors suggested he even mentioned riders like Stoner, Lorenzo, and yes, Marquez. But that wasn't what shocked the paddock most. It was what Rossi hinted beneath his praise, a suggestion that Toprak seemed to sense the bike's limits in a way that shouldn't have been possible for someone riding a MotoGP machine for the very first time. And that's when teams started paying attention. Because Rossi doesn't praise lightly. And he never praises without purpose. But even Rossi didn't know what would surface next. Inside the Yamaha garage, technicians kept describing the same sensation, something unusual, something uncomfortable, something almost surreal. A superbike rider wasn't supposed to master MotoGP's Michelin front tire so quickly. They weren't supposed to interpret aero changes instantly. They weren't supposed to find performance in braking zones that usually punish rookies. Yet Toprak did all of that within days. Some engineers said his feedback sounded like it came from a 5-year MotoGP veteran. Others noticed he made micro-adjustments to his corner entry that usually take riders months to understand. He wasn't guessing. He was reading the bike like a book. Every lap, every corner, every correction, Toprak was absorbing information at a rate that left Yamaha's technical crew stunned. One insider whispered, "He doesn't adapt like a rookie, he adapts like someone who has been here before." But the most unsettling moment came when Yamaha altered the aero configuration mid-session. Most riders take a dozen laps to recalibrate their braking points. Toprak got it right in 2. That was the moment some engineers realized something. This wasn't just raw talent. This was a rider whose instincts were built for MotoGP, even if his career path never suggested it. And Yamaha hadn't even shown him the biggest secret yet. Because something far more delicate, far more important, was waiting in Misano. The paddock didn't know it at the time, But Yamaha was preparing for one of its most ambitious projects in modern history, an all-new V4 engine. A complete departure from their decades-long inline-4 identity. A move filled with risk, political tension, and enormous stakes. And this was the bike they placed in the hands of a MotoGP rookie. The test at Misano wasn't just private, it was guarded. Literally guarded. Security tightened. Access limited. No media, no visiting teams, no cameras. Only a handful of Yamaha's most trusted engineers were allowed inside. According to whispers from the paddock, Yamaha didn't just bring one prototype, they brought three. Three entirely different V4 configurations. And they asked Toprak to test them all. In a single day. His job wasn't just to ride. It was to judge, to feel, to guide. Some insiders said this test was less about lap time and more about discovering whether this new bike had a future, or whether the project needed to be rewritten from scratch. What no one expected was how Toprak responded. Because he didn't simply ride the new V4. He began shaping it. And that's when Yamaha realized they might have found something, or someone, they didn't even know they were looking for. Inside those secret walls, Yamaha engineers watched closely. They didn't just look at the data. They looked at the body language of the bike, the braking dive ease, the mid-corner stability, the throttle response, the vibrations in acceleration. Modern MotoGP machines are not just powerful. They're living, breathing technical organisms. And Toprak treated each version like a conversation. He described exactly how the power hit in the mid-range. He explained where the bike pushed under heavy braking. He noted how the electronics behaved the moment he opened the throttle on corner exit. He even mentioned how the chassis talked back to him on cambered corners. This wasn't ordinary sensitivity. This was a rider who could feel the bike's heartbeat. Engineers were stunned by how effortlessly he adapted to the V4's aggressive nature, something Yamaha riders traditionally struggled with. According to development sources, his lap times weren't just promising. They were approaching internal benchmarks set for the project. And this triggered a new kind of tension, internal, strategic, political. Because a question began forming quietly among Yamaha's leadership. Is this the rider we build the V4 era around? When rumors of Toprak's pace leaked out quietly through mechanics and suppliers, rival teams began to react. Ducati analysts started collecting data. KTM's aero department requested extra simulations. Aprilia engineers asked for timing estimations. This wasn't normal curiosity. This was concern. Because a rookie wasn't supposed to be near competitive pace on a prototype engine. A rookie wasn't supposed to destabilize a manufacturer's hierarchy before his first race. And a rookie definitely wasn't supposed to threaten full factory riders before even entering his debut season. But Toprak did all three. Some inside Yamaha began to wonder how this would affect their internal structure. A strong rookie can create rifts, rider hierarchy, crew chief assignments, development priorities. One rival rider was even overheard muttering, "If he is this fast now, imagine him in 6 months." But the comparisons that surfaced next would push the narrative into a completely different dimension. It started quietly, just a few analysts, a few journalists, a few engineers comparing notes. Then it spread. Not because of lap times. Not because of hype. But because of adaptation. Some began whispering that Toprak's early signs resembled something only seen once or twice in the modern era, the arrival of a rider whose instincts bypass the usual learning curve entirely. A rider who sees the limit before he reaches it. A rider who bends the bike rather than lets the bike bend him. People remembered Marquez in 2013. Stoner in 2007. Rossi in 2000. Not in results but in sensation. Toprak didn't chase speed. Speed came to him. And that created a new kind of weight, the invisible pressure of expectation. Behind the scenes, Yamaha debated how much responsibility they could place on him. He wasn't just a rider anymore. He was a symbol, a potential turning point at a time when Yamaha desperately needed one. Some in the garage believed the comparison was premature. Others believed it was inevitable. But while the world was busy debating his future, they missed something crucial happening inside Yamaha's camp. The brand wasn't just watching his progress. They were leaning toward him. And that shift would redefine everything that came next. What began as a rookie debut slowly transformed into something far larger, a developmental responsibility that most riders don't experience until years into their MotoGP careers. Toprak was no longer just evaluating a prototype. He was shaping Yamaha's future identity. The V4 era. The next generation. The comeback plans. Internally, some staff began referring to him as the cornerstone of the new project. Not publicly, not officially, but quietly with growing confidence. In Toprak, he embraced the weight without fanfare. No dramatic statements. No social media noise. Just intense focus, determination, and a level of maturity that impressed even the senior engineers. In the Misano paddock, he walked differently. Not arrogantly, purposefully, like someone who understood exactly what was being placed on his shoulders and accepted it. But the truth is this. Everything so far has only been preparation. Only a foundation. Because the biggest questions remain unanswered. The real test hasn't happened yet. And the paddock knows it. What happens when Toprak finally enters a real MotoGP race? Not a test, not a simulation, but the arena where legends are made and broken. The answer could reshape the future of Yamaha. And maybe even the shape of MotoGP history. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu hasn't started his first MotoGP season yet. He hasn't battled the best. He hasn't faced the pressure of championship Sundays. He hasn't been pushed to the edge by riders who have dominated the sport for a decade. But he will. And when that moment comes, the paddock believes one thing. Whatever we've seen so far is only the beginning. Because if the whispers from Yamaha are true, if the V4 is truly awakening, and if Toprak continues rising at this pace, MotoGP might be on the verge of witnessing the birth of a new phenomenon. A chapter no one expected. A future no one is ready for. A storm that has only just begun.